Well, welcome. My name is John MacArthur. I work at Portland State University's TREC, which is Transportation Research and Education Center. I am hosting this webinar and webinar series with Laura Hansen from RDPO. There's Laura just waved. And we really appreciate everyone taking the time to participate in this first workshop of our regional workshop series on transportation resiliency and recovery. I have a great group of people as a panel, and I appreciate everybody joining in here. And I should say what we're trying to do with this workshop series is RDPO has been doing a lot of work around disaster preparedness and recovery, but we're going to try to focus a regional dialogue and discussion around transportation. They have recently finished a couple projects related to transportation, most notably the emergency transportation route phase 1 project, and have a couple other projects on the horizon. So we're trying to kind of build up this this regional dialogue around transportation issues as it relates to disaster and preparedness and resiliency. And this is our first one. And we're particularly looking at emergency response in this webinar today. That's my slide. So everybody attending the webinar today, it is being recorded and slides will be posted on the TREC website, and we will provide that link. And actually it's provided here just in blue, but I'll make sure it gets into the chat. So if people want to bookmark that or save it at some point, we will have that recording and slides posted. Also, for people that are taking AICP credits or need some credits for their professional kind of certifications, we will be providing 1.5 credit hours, or you can submit that accreditation. Also, those links to those certificates are on that website. But if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I'll provide contact information at the end of the webinar. And finally, the way we will be setting up this presentation, we'll talk on both topics on wildfires and winter storms affecting Clackamas County for about the next hour, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So for Q&A, you will notice the chat is kind of disabled on your part, but if you have a question that you want to ask the panel or anybody else, post it in the Q&A tab. So you see the arrow pointing to Q&A. You can go there and submit your questions. There's also a feature that you will be able to upvote. So if somebody else has a question that you really like, you can upvote that, and we'll see that that question is getting a lot of interest, and we'll try to make sure that it gets answered. So this is our first workshop. Our next workshop is in December, or webinar, December 8th. If you haven't signed up for it already, please go to the link, and we'll provide it in the chat here, at some point shortly. And that one will be talking about regional transportation resiliency and resilience investments and plans. And I'll discuss that in a little bit at the end of the webinar. So here we go. So for today's webinar, we have one introductory speaker and 3 panelists. First of all, Mayor Ann McInerney Ogle is the mayor of Vancouver, Washington. She serves as the chair for CTRAN Board of Directors, member of the Southwest Regional Transportation Council, member of Metro's JPAC committee, and chair of RDPO's policy committee. And she'll be providing a introduction to the webinar here shortly. And then the three panelists today. First, Mike Besner has worked at Clackamas County for almost 23 years while serving several roles in county transportation. Currently, he serves as the Assistant Director of Transportation for a program responsible for planning, maintaining, and operating, and this was shocking to me, but not shocking, I guess, 1,400 miles of county roads. Next is Jamie Poole, the Interim Director Disaster Manager for Clackamas County Disaster Management, and has worked there for over 10 years. Jamie has served as a liaison to city and special district emergency managers and manages the county's emergency notification system program. During the 2020 wildfires, she was part of the team alerting residents and worked in coordination with the state and FEMA voluntary agency liaisons to develop Clackamas County's first long-term recovery group. And finally, not least, Captain Brad ONeal is a patrol captain for Clackamas County Sheriff's Office, where he oversees the 24/7 operations of about 120 sheriff deputies. He's been in law enforcement for 22 years. Throughout that time at the Sheriff's Office, he has worked as a patrol deputy in both urban and rural patrol areas and 13 years as a canine handler. After working as a patrol lieutenant, he was transferred back to investigation division overseeing major investigations that include homicides, child abuse, and property crimes. During this time at the division, he was promoted to acting captain for that unit and also assigned to rebuild the search and rescue program. While in charge of the search and rescue program, he oversaw the evacuation response and welfare checks for both the 2020 wildfires and the 2021 ice storm. So that said, first, Mayor, hand it over to you.
Thank you, John. And thank you for the opportunity to welcome all of you as the chair of the RDPO Policy Committee. As the chair, maybe you're not quite familiar with RDPO, but we're a regional organization that serves 5 counties in the Vancouver-Portland metropolitan area. And our work is to advance the disaster preparedness across a lot of different disciplines. So in the recent years, as you heard John mention, we worked with Metro on updating those regional emergency transportation routes. All that information was shared earlier this year. And it brought individuals together to have that conversation to address the importance of that resilient infrastructure, if you would. More work is planned for all of that. And in the interim, we've developed these workshops to host a wider conversation about transportation resiliency and recovery. So as John pointed out, you'll be working in these next, this course. You'll be hearing some real world incidents. You'll be learning about transportation. You'll be diving deep into planning and a toolkit that was developed a few years ago to facilitate transportation recovery. And as John pointed out, and as all of your speakers are here today to talk about those historic natural disasters of the wildfires in Clackamas County, the winter storms, the historic heat events of this summer, I know it's hard to take a pause and really plan and reflect on all of that, but we hope that all of that works today for you as you prepare for all of your work for your agencies. And thank you so much for the Clackamas County speakers who are here to share their experiences and their emergencies and help us develop for our entire region those plans. So Professor, take it from here and let's get started.
Thank you, Mayor. And like you said, I mean, it has been an unprecedented year for many reasons, but Clackamas County faced even more than even us, myself. They had the wildfires in 2020 and then the ice storms in 2021. And I really, can't wait to hear of all the hard work these 3 individuals did, but everyone else, that they represent at the county, of all the hard work they did. over the last year. It was a very trying time for everyone. So let's jump into the Clackamas wildfires. I don't know what's, I got a timer going here by accident. Okay. So Captain ONeal, I think you were gonna.
Yep. I'll go ahead and take it from here. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to speak in front of you today. This is a little snippet out of a PowerPoint that I created at the end of the wildfires to kind of do a debrief of what actually went on. So just to kind of set up the conditions, we're talking about September 7th and 8th of 2020. Our high temperatures were between 81 to 90 degrees, low temperatures between 63 and 64 degrees, and the humidity at 12%. That humidity is what really played a key role in starting or helping to initiate all these fires that I'm going to talk about here in just a second. The other issue is you add winds of 15 to 32 miles an hour out of the east and gusting up to 50 to 60 miles an hour. Next slide. All right, so let's talk about the fires in Clackamas County. We always talk about wildfires, and we can deal with one fire, but when you have multiple fires burning across different sections of the county, that created huge challenges for us. So first off, the biggest fire in our county was the Riverside Fire. Just to give you an idea of a size, it was 138,000 acres. We also had the Wilhoit Fire that was 532 acres. The Unger Fire was 497 acres. The Dowdy Fire was 1,500 acres. And the Graves Fire was 46 acres. And then the smallest one was the RSG Fire at 25 acres. Those were the initial fires that started in Clackamas County. We also had two other fires coming out of the south in Marion County. One was the Lion's Head Fire, which was 204,000 acres. And the Beachy Creek Fire was about 193,500 acres. Those two fires ended up merging and creeping into our county as well. Next slide. So I'm just going to take you through a quick little timeline here. The first fire was the RSG fire that kicked off just north of the city of Molalla on Highway 213. We have an RSG mill. That was about 8:47 p.m. on the 7th. As you can see in that picture, there's those are log decks that are on fire, stacked logs at the mill that actually caught on fire. So during this time, for patrol services for our sheriff's office, we have two deputies patrolling that one area where this RSG fire kicked off. A few minutes later, we had a report of a field fire out on Dowdy Road, just to the east of the RSG fire. Our deputies initially started doing door-to-door evacuations in cooperation with the fire department. The fire department was actively trying to attack these fires, while it was our responsibility to go into the neighborhoods and evacuate those houses that were in danger. Then at about 11:24 p.m., we had yet another fire kick off out at the Unger Fire. And it was about a quarter acre in size and growing very quickly. Next slide. As we go through, you can just kind of read through this timeline. Just for the sake of time, I'll let you kind of browse that. So we now have 3 fires that we have a total of 4 deputies trying to do evacuations at 3 different fire locations. At this point, we started sending a few more deputies from other surrounding districts, and then some of the smaller cities, city of Molalla, city of Canby, I believe, came out and helped out as well with those evacuations. Next slide. Then at about 5:19, so now we're on the 8th, about 5:19 a.m., we had a report from the Forest Service about the Riverside Fire that started clear out east of city of Estacada up in the National Forest Service area. This is typically the area where we get our wildfires away from the actual residential areas. So the Unger, the RSG, and the Dowdy Fire, that's all in our urban populated area. So there wasn't an immediate risk to evacuate people on the Riverside Fire. However, we did send personnel up there to just kind of get a brief from the Forest Service on what was going on. Now, remember, this started east of Estacada, and when I started this, I talked about we had those heavy east winds blowing that fire. Unfortunately, it's kind of a canyon. It follows the Clackamas River corridor through there, and so it's just blowing straight up that canyon at a very high rate of speed. So we started coordinating at that point on the Riverside Fire. They were still working some of the smaller fire evacuations. And we have a Timberlake Job Corps camp that's up the Clackamas River that we had to evacuate. That was the first evacuations on that Riverside Fire that we actually initiated. So throughout the morning of the 8th, we were working to just kind of assess what was going on and the speed of the fire, being in contact with fire to really get a grasp on what was going on there. Next slide. So as the Riverside Fire started creeping in more towards the city of Estacada, we had to evacuate the Silver Fox Mobile Home Park, which is up by Promontory Park. At about 2 o'clock, I kind of saw there was a lot more activity on the Riverside Fire. And so I went out and met with the Forest Service to kind of get a brief and figure out a plan to move forward and really get organized. So that was kind of our initial point of organizing and bringing together all the different cooperatives and stakeholders in this to kind of work together to figure out what is our biggest plan of attack on it and what's our biggest first evacuation zone that we need to look at. We utilized our search and rescue volunteers to help us with those evacuations. And at about 3 o'clock on the 8th, we finally established a command post at the Estacada High School, where I brought in my search and rescue coordinators to really start planning out, chunking off the residential areas to figure out how we were going to evacuate and just notify everyone that they're in a level 3 evacuation zone at that point. One of the things that we did as well, just on the fly, we didn't have any technology to kind of track what houses had been evacuated. So we used paint on people's driveways or on the street to just kind of paint that, yes, someone had been to that house to try and make a notification. And that way we weren't doubling up our work and we could get to more houses at that point. Next slide. And actually the Graves Fire at the very end of that last slide, the Graves Fire ended up touching off at about 1:30 on the 8th as well, which created yet another fire in our county. So when we talk about looking at evacuation zones, this is the outline of our entire county. This wasn't the immediate evacuation zone. This was at the height of the fires. Every portion of our county had some sort of evacuation zone notice, whether it's a level 1, 2, or 3. And the majority of the county is in red there, and that's the level 3 go now evacuation. And that definitely will play into some of our conversation, I'm sure, as we go on when we talk about transportation. Next slide. So the aftermath, these are, yeah, it looks like these are the updated ones. The biggest thing that I take away from this is all the work that we put into it. The best outcome possible for us is 0 lives lost. We did not lose 1 life during this fire event, even though there were multiple fires burning all over the place, in and around and through residential areas. We did lose 38 actual residential houses, 31 manufactured homes, and 113 outbuildings. During this time, we ended up keeping a spreadsheet of every address that we went to notify for those residences. So we actually had a person go to over 8,845 different residences, and about 53,000 of our 400,000 plus residents in Clackamas County were evacuated in that level 3 zone. Next slide.
So thank you. And so that gives us some context about the fires. And so what we'd like to do with the panel is kind of work through this kind of outline to kind of talk about some of the challenges and successes and lessons learned and even recommendations for you at other counties and cities to think about, but also recommendations for Clackamas County themselves. So, Mike, did you want to kind of start things off around some of the challenges you face either within your department or the county itself?
You bet. Thanks. So it's interesting. I was sitting here thinking, I'm looking at Captain ONeal's slides in September 7th, September 8th. So I remembered what I was doing the second I got called in to come into our emergency operations center on September 8th, between 3 and 4 o'clock, because I was in a meeting with Laura Hansen going over the ETR update on a big Zoom meeting with like 20 people. And right away I said, hey, I got a phone call, took it, said, everyone, I got to go right now because of the fire. And they said, see ya. And the next 3 weeks were an interesting adventure. But that's how it starts. That is how it starts. So the challenges faced were many. I mean, I know in my career, I have never been faced with a massive event like this. And so as public works or transportation officials, you're going to get called in and you're going to say, all right, help people figure out how to evacuate. Okay. And a lot of the challenges involved working with several different fire districts all at the same time, who all speak a different language, who all know the geography out there like the back of their hand. And they'll use stuff like, oh yeah, that third hill over there, and sneak by that tree. And when they want us to draw evacuation lines, and I had no idea what they were talking about. I knew the roads really well, and they knew the geography really well. But our first big challenge was, let's get people out. Who needs to go? And of course, police and fire are primary on that. It's not transportation, but then we have to come in and figure out how the heck are we going to do it? And one big challenge, in this photo shows it, is when a whole bunch of people go to leave all at once, it doesn't work real well. And so our county has a lot of mountains and a lot of water. And so we don't have, like you're not gonna have a wildfire in East Portland, but if you did, you have a real nice grid with many different options. And Clackamas County just doesn't have that. There's 1 or 2 state highways and a couple major county roads, and they plug up very, very fast. Another challenge was also, and Captain ONeal and the sheriff's office and Department of Transportation, we have a good working relationship. We do lots of things together, but we had never done this together. And so, we all have, I know as police and fire, it's, all hands on deck and you're first responders and you're out there, but transportation isn't too far behind. We have a pretty similar mindset where we're used to having to go out and help people. And so it was, again, establishing that and working our way into their framework. They're well trained and they do this all the time. And as transportation, we wanted to be useful and wanted to make sure they knew what we can do and that we could actually provide value towards the effort. And I think we went a long way. And I'll talk about successes. I'll see if anyone else wants to talk about challenges first, but that was one of our major successes in my opinion. We'll talk about that moving forward, how we can do this differently. But the other biggest challenge was working on those evacuation routes. We had a lot of traffic coming down Highway 213 to 205, and there's a pedestrian bridge that actually the county sewer district owns going over the Clackamas that goes into Gladstone. And we didn't have an existing plan to use it. And so on the fly, we had to get them to unlock bollards. We had to put signs up. We had to work with the city of Gladstone and the Gladstone police chief very quickly. We ended up not using it, but we very quickly got mobilized to the point where we could. But boy, if that had been already taken care of ahead of time, it would have been a lot easier. So that was another challenge is, you don't get much notice and all of a sudden you got to go. Captain O'Neill, Jamie, do you have other challenges faced before we move on to successes?
Yeah, I'll talk about one of the challenges. You know, when we talk about evacuations, you know, the first thing we think of are people. This is our rural area, and we've got livestock and animals and, you know, other living things that we need to actually get out of there. And some people have more livestock than what they can haul in one trip. So not only do they need to get the livestock out, number one, they need a place to take them, but then they're going to have to make another trip back to get more livestock and animals. And depending on where that fire line was, you know, some of those residents may have only had one opportunity for one trip. So now we've got other community organization groups that are willing to help with their trailers and creating even more traffic on the road, and just kind of really bottlenecking that. And then one of our other challenges on the law enforcement side throughout the fires were we had really concerned citizens that were afraid of looting since they were evacuated from their houses. So some of the neighborhood groups were actually went into their armories and were heavily armed and went out and started setting up roadblocks to their neighborhood and creating more traffic issues. You know, trying to prevent people that shouldn't be in there from getting in there. And so that was a huge challenge for us to overcome as well on the law side.
Yeah, thank you for adding that. By the way, I should add one more challenge faced is most of our employees live in Clackamas County. I could tell you while these fires were going on and you saw that evacuation map, my wife's calling me saying, do we have to leave our house? Now we were in the green, but you know, I said no, but you know, just be thinking about it. But you know, our maintenance operations manager did have to evacuate. He lives just outside Estacada. And I could tell you one night about 2 o'clock in the morning, the smoke alarm in my house went off. So the air was horrific. I mean, I'm sure you all know if you're in the area at all, but you have to, you know, even though you're in it, you know, and one day Cascadia, it's what it's going to be like. You know, we're all going to be living it at the same time as we're trying to help people. Jamie, do you have anything to add there under challenges?
Yeah, I would also add, so there is a question in the Q&A, which I'd like to address. So the question is, I'm a wheelchair user who lives alone and relies on public transportation. What plans are in place to assist people like me in case of an evacuation? So I would say that's another challenge for us. We do not have in Clackamas County a really good handle on, you know, where every person is that may have this challenge or another challenge, like being on assistive medical devices or anything like that. But we do have what we call a public inquiry center that we activate during events like this, where we have call takers that can come in and take calls from the public that have needs and or have questions. So that is something, if you are in a county, to look for, you know, if there's a published number that you can contact to make sure that you have that and can call it. But also, I think as a resident, being able to plan with your neighbors and friends to have a plan for yourself to address that as well. So and we ask people, you know, during these types of things to check on their neighbors and if there's people that need help to help them get out. And we also can work with public transportation as well, you know, making sure that we communicate that to the public. But that's a challenge as well, as if they can't get in there to help because the roads are clogged up, that's a big challenge.
Thanks. So I'll move on to talking about some successes, and a couple of them quickly. Well, the most obvious one is the one Captain O'Neill focused on. We didn't lose anybody. I mean, that is number one. And, you know, people can have a lot of criticism after the fact that you should have done this, you should have done that. Great. You know, I mean, there's always going to be something, but 0 lives lost. I mean, you know, just an incredible job by everybody involved. couple others. I mean, we talk about ETRs, and we had some discussion about, how did ETRs fall into this? I mean, other than the fact that we make sure they're in good condition. I don't know that there's, frankly, and for this event at least, much more than that, but we take care of them. So when they're needed and when people need to rely on them with potentially their lives, it's there, it's usable, it's clear, it's in good shape, it's ready, the striping's good, everything. So in that respect, the actual conditions of the roads were not an issue. We can't magically make new roads through mountains, but we can make sure we take care of the ones that we have. And, I do think that the communication built with the sheriff's office and fire, we were all co-located in the Emergency Operations Center for a few weeks. And, I think we found our way through a unique event. And I think we were a pretty good team and learned how to definitely work together as more of a cohesive team as the event went on. So I thought that part went really well. Captain, do you have any others?
Yeah, I just echo exactly what you said. 0 lives lost. The cooperation between all the county agencies and the EOC. Everyone had a seat at the table and was informed as to what was going on. When my deputies in the field came across an issue, they would get it back to our command post for our sheriff's office that would then relay it to the EOC, because it might be a logistical thing where, yeah, someone needs a specialized vehicle to be able to evacuate. So then the EOC would start working on that to get them what they needed. So that communication back and forth worked great. It was a little slow at the beginning, I think. But I think once everyone realized the magnitude of this event, it really came together. And you can plan your emergency evacuation routes and everything perfect for a fire, but who knew we were going to have 5 fires going at the same time across this huge wide area? So the infrastructure of our county roads just can't handle that much traffic. So but we mitigated it, we worked through it, and I think it was a huge success as far as disaster management goes.
Yeah, Jamie?
Yeah, I will add, so talking about having to evacuate as far as staff goes, we also had our 911 dispatch center, CCOM, have to relocate during this as well because they were within a level 2. So they successfully fell back on their continuity of operations plan, and that worked really well, and they were able to take calls and relocate and do all of that through this. What else? I had another thing that I'll have to come back to it.
Not a problem. I'll throw one more out there. We mentioned all the illegal road closures, the rogue road closures. Well, we had a lot of legal ones too. And I'll say that our transportation maintenance staff did incredible work setting them up very, very quickly, virtually everywhere, frankly, in South County. So, that's their bread and butter. They know how to do that. And they definitely performed. Again, we were being directed where to do them, but I thought that worked really well.
I would say too, so part of what I think, Mike, you mentioned kind of shifting or into this response being kind of slow. We were fully activated for COVID at the time as well. So that day, I remember being in the EOC and there was a full COVID functioning EOC going on. And we were like sitting there, I'm like, we need to start pulling people into a fire EOC. So that transition, it took a minute, but it was successful. And we ended up having to relocate our EOC as well because of COVID and the sheer amount of people that we had located there. We had to move to space out due to COVID. And I would also say that this RV thing, so having all these RVs kind of evacuate with folks, we kind of had to shift our planning around sheltering. So we were actually very successful in sheltering people in parking lots because they had RVs, but with that came some other challenges around having to get folks propane and different things like that, but successful all in all.
Yeah, maybe we could expand on that that issue a little bit about, and tell them what the issue that you had all these people evacuating. They had, as you can see in the picture, lots of RVs, but really when you were directing them to go someplace, and maybe you can talk a little bit about, how you during evacuation, where you're asking them to go, where are these kind of mass care locations or family assistance centers that you're trying to get them to, but they were overwhelmed by the parking needs. But so I just was wondering if you could talk about that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually have a good relationship with the Clackamas Town Center, and we're able to utilize a parking lot there. We also were able to make a connection with a church in Gladstone that was able to open up their campgrounds and house people there as well. And we did work with the Red Cross to be able to kind of bring folks in to help us, like help with the feeding and with the people being checked in and those kinds of things at those sites, because it's not a typical site. There were other community-based organizations that also came around and helped with feeding and helped with some donations management. So one of the other things that became a problem was folks dropping off donations. When you're not requesting those, it can become kind of a problem. So Salvation Army came in and helped us with that. Yeah, so just trying to find not a place, a facility for people to sleep in, but finding parking lots that really match up and having the right stuff. So we had to deliver porta potties. We had to figure out ways for folks to dump their gray water and wastewater, and so just some different challenges that came with it.
How long were people at those locations?
Oh goodness, that's a great question. Quite a while. Captain ONeal, do you remember the last? I'd have to.
So it really depended on where their house was and how those fires got contained and when it was safe to go back into their residence. So, this whole event lasted 2-3 weeks of nonstop people being out of their residence. And then you have others that may have gone back to their residence and found that it had burned.
Yeah,
so
we did have a couple folks in hotels for quite a while that were finally back in like something else that's temporary on their property, but yeah.
Yeah.
So lessons learned, lots, but I'll focus on one in particular that we've already acted on, and that's the way we evacuate people. Now, again, this is hindsight. At the time, I could tell you, I don't know if Captain ONeal did it quite justice with that Beachy Creek fire coming up from the south and that Riverside fire. They were both gigantic on their own, and they were really close to combining. And that the briefs we were getting at the time from fire were, yeah, if that happens, it's going to start creating its own weather. You could feel the tension. And so, decisions were made, and we had a very large evacuation area because no one was 100% sure exactly what would happen, and it came close. But what we've learned from that is, if there's a fire starting to simmer out there, let's get on it now and start just saying, okay, let's start thinking about redundant routes. Most people came up the same way, trying to get to 205 in Oregon City. Well, we didn't, they could have gone to Woodburn, potentially could have gone to Sandy. I mean, there are other routes that might take a little longer to get there, but considering the traffic, they might actually have been quicker. And pre-arranging those evacuation zones so that we have an orderly change from you must leave, or I'm sorry, from think about what you do to pack to you must leave. And that way, if we're able to slow it down a little, we can clear the people who absolutely need to get out now, and we would have less congestion on the roads. We had a fire here in South County. Oh, it might still be burning. Yeah, it probably is, near Bull of the Woods Wilderness, which most of you probably don't know, but it's extreme South Clackamas County. And Captain ONeal reached out to us and said, hey, just in case, let's start talking about it. We got out a map, we got fire, and we all prepared. And luckily the weather changed and we're looking good. But should it have gotten worse, should it have expanded, we were really well poised to get the communication out and do an orderly evacuation process. For me, that was the number one lesson learned. Captain ONeal, you got more?
Yeah, you know, the biggest lesson for me is getting on top of it sooner and really getting a handle on what's going on. You know, by the time I got involved, we were probably 16 hours after the first fire started. And that's a little too long in my opinion. And you know, one thing that we've done different since then is whenever there's a wildfire that starts up, Daniel, a disaster management, the Clackamas fire representative, and myself, we all text each other, say, hey, there's a fire going, and we all immediately respond up to our dispatch center to really just get a handle on what is this looking like, and what do we need to ramp up from there. And that's exactly what we did with the Bull complex fire that Mike was talking about. We all got together in one room and really started planning out those evacuation zones because we had time. We had no time during the 2020 wildfires. But when you have the time to be able to sit down with transportation, disaster management, sheriff's office, fire department, and really plan out those zones and then start thinking beyond that, you know, what routes can we send them to with signage or direction, you know, public service announcements, whatever it is, how you get your information out. Try and push them to other alternate routes so we're not jamming up that main route to get out of there. And then one other lesson that we learned too is, and it kind of touches on that first question from one of the participants about wheelchair bound people. You know, people with special needs, they may be in a level 2 zone, but they need to start evacuating their property, their livestock themselves now. And so we have all the level 3 trying to get out, and now we're adding some people in the level 2 as well. So just be cognizant of that level 2 zone. There's a lot of people that will evacuate in a level 2, and that puts a lot more stress on your infrastructure as well.
Jamie, you got anything to add?
Yeah, yep. I was going to mention that when we had some of those really big level 2 and level 1 areas, it did cause more people to go. So kind of we can wait on those and time it right so that we allow for time. And then we also are looking at different options for evacuation zone planning. There are a couple cities in Oregon that are currently working with a vendor. They're demoing a product that actually helps you kind of break up the area into zones and then predetermine those, so folks can actually get familiar with what zone they're in, and the law or fire folks can, you know, talk about the zones in those areas, and it makes it clearer for notifications as well for drawing those maps. Like Mike said, when someone's telling you which area to evacuate, it's pretty hard to get that pinned down. So if it's just activate these zones and send it out, and that would make it a lot easier. So we're keeping an eye on that and trying to figure out how we can make that work for us as well.
You know, the other benefit of predetermining zones, which is hard because again, we don't know where the next fire is going to be. It's not perfect, but it goes into that number 5 there for planning. You know, when you're doing these very quickly at 11 o'clock at night in a room with a GIS person, they're not too exact the way they're drawing the line. And so let's say we say, hey, Highway 211, everyone's south of it, we need to put them in a level 2. Well, they're drawing a line And depending on how careful or how closely they're doing it, they might be picking different sides of that road, which, I mean, this is a fine detail, but it causes a lot of confusion when people talk to their neighbors and find out, wait, both my neighbors were just asked to leave and I'm right behind them. And it's because the resolution on the GIS drawing, when they're drawing the line, isn't maybe as fine tuned as it could be. So identifying all that ahead of time and maybe even have it pre-drawn in GIS could really help with the public messaging and with the accuracy of what we're trying to do.
Mike, if I could touch on a question from one of the participants. One of my good friends was in that area too. Her house got broken into and damaged when they returned home. How we can do differently to protect our residents' properties? Just to give you an idea from the law side, in that area where those fires were burning, it's 2 different districts. We have anywhere between 2 and 4 deputies working that huge area at one time. During the wildfires, I ran our operations section over the graveyard shift, and we had upwards of right around 34 police officers out patrolling that area where we normally have 2 to 4. We did see an increase in criminal activity, burglaries, theft, and whatnot. We did arrest several people and did multiple investigations on it. But how can you protect yourself? You know, it's difficult when you're looking at protecting your life versus protecting your property. We can replace property, we can't replace life. So first and foremost, your life is the most important. Then we look at property. If there's a chance that you can lock it up, if not, the best thing that you can do to protect yourself is just have cameras around your house. So then we could utilize that in an investigation at a later time. There are also other people who refuse to evacuate, neighbors that were kind of just patrolling their own neighborhoods. So, you know, that's not something we recommend by any means. You know, if you're in a level 3, that means you probably shouldn't be in there. But we're not going to arrest someone to force them out of there as well. You're making that decision on your own. But, you know, just good crime prevention stuff. Cameras are one of the best tools that we have these days to help prevent that crime.
Yeah, and there's another question here about how do we get emergency vehicles and fire and rescue through the traffic? Well, that's a challenge, but the good news is the traffic was pretty much only going in one direction. So, you know, I would imagine that going against flow was not a big problem, you know, but again, we don't have a lot of routes in our county. It's difficult, but I wasn't aware that there were problems. I wouldn't say we closed all the roads that emergency response would be needed. That would be hard, but anywhere in where people were having to leave, we did close them. Obviously, emergency response would be allowed through. They weren't, you know, permanent kind of closures. They were just staffed with barricades.
And that is one thing with our roads in the county. As you can see the picture of this road, you know, there's 2 lanes, but you can fit 3 vehicles wide on that. And typically, if it was jam-packed in both directions, people move off onto the shoulder to give emergency vehicles enough room to just drive right down the middle. Is the easiest route for that. But yeah, like Mike said, everyone else was driving north away from the danger, and first responders always drive to the danger. So from what I saw of news footage of emergency vehicles driving on the roadways, they had very little traffic in their direction to get through.
Yeah.
Did you have to close any roads and reroute evacuation routes at all? I can't remember if that happened or not. And if not, like, how would you suggest doing that now that you've gone through this and thinking, I know you don't have a lot of redundancy in your system, but.
Do you mean if, let's say this road and suddenly it was an evacuation zone and we had to, or there was an evacuation zone ahead of them, which
Yes.
actually I don't think we had that happen.
Luckily.
I'd have to put thought into that. I think honestly, it goes back to being a little more thoughtful. And like I say, it's hindsight. Captain ONeal said it best. We did not have a lot of time on this one. Let's hope that never happens again. But being a little more thoughtful on how we release the zones, just to let them clear out in an orderly fashion. And I guess if midway we had to suddenly react, I believe we would have been able to. The sheriff had a ton of resources, and again, our transportation maintenance employees, and we've got about 100 of them. You know, when this is going on, it's all hands on deck. We're not working on anything else. So if we had to go set up an instant detour, we'd be able to.
I'm looking at the time, and I want to shift from the fire to the ice, but is there any last comments, anything we missed here? I see one last question. If I remember correctly, Kaiser Sunnyside was or started to evacuate. Please let us know if you have any insight on how that worked or unfolded.
They were not in a must evacuate zone. So if they had done
if I remember correctly, they had chosen to close due to smoke. I remember I actually had an appointment to take my daughter there, and they called me and canceled it due to smoke. So I'm not sure if that might be what you're thinking of.
Yeah, they were not forced to, but they might have chosen to.
Right. And if it got to that point, it would have been way more serious up there too.
Well, you know, in the county, we operate a dog shelter as well, and that was off Highway 212, and suddenly it was in a, you know, get ready, and it's like, okay, we got 30 dogs. We can't just leave them. And so, you know, that was yet another dimension to all of this. So, but anyway, yes, in addition to that.
Yes, in addition to that, 6 months later.
In February, we had a lot more fun.
Yes. So I
where-
can go ahead and take this one.
Go for it.
Yeah, so in February, it was around mid-February that we started hearing from the Weather Service about the winter storm coming. I'd like to point out that when we got our weather briefing, like the latest that we had gotten before all of this ice hit, was the ice was really tracking to the west and not like maybe towards Wilsonville, and like not as much as they anticipated, or they didn't anticipate as much as we got. So we got a lot of ice throughout the county, and we declared a state of emergency that we actually had to extend through May due to all of the debris caused by the ice storm. And so when we did our initial damage assessment, as of February 26th, from February 12th through the 26th, there was 589 road miles that were county road right-of-way debris removal and clearance was completed on. A lot of down trees. If you go to the next slide,
that's a third of the miles, if I'm correct, or about a third. That's crazy.
Yeah, a lot. And you'll see the impact of that. So when we get down trees, we get down power lines. And there were nearly 144,000 customers that were affected by outages. You can see here on this chart that the top 5 zip codes, the numbers of impacted customers was a large amount. Gladstone, Milwaukee, Canby, Beaver Creek, Lake Oswego, Westland, and Oregon City were the heaviest hit, and many customers were out with or without power for more than 2 weeks. So not only were these trees and stuff down in the roadways, the power lines were down in the roadways, so people couldn't get out. They had to kind of wait for the utility and roads to come together to clear those roads out, especially if there were power lines. I've heard of anecdotally of people that kind of dug their way out of their local roads and probably did things that weren't as safe with those lines down. And what I'd also like to say here is a lot of our employees were impacted as well. And the county, actually, our network went down on this disaster. We had a generator failure for our county network. So a lot of us in trying to operate an emergency operations center, it was remote, and we were relying on things that we don't normally rely on, like Google products that were not county sanctioned, and we were, you know, cell phones were in and out across the county. So in checking, like one of our city, the city of Malala, our contact there, I had to call his wife's cell phone to get a hold of him, just because his personal cell phone and work cell phone were out, and he could only get coverage in a certain area on this property. Anyway, so there's a lot of challenges that way. And let's see, I think if you want to go, we could probably just get into the next, yeah, the discussion here.
Yeah. Go ahead, John.
No, just kick it off. A lot of different challenges here.
Yeah. So I was telling John earlier, this photo, I didn't have a tree fall on my house, thank goodness, but I had an 80-foot tall walnut tree in my backyard come within 6 inches of my house. And I did lose power for a week, and I did have a power line preventing me from getting out. So much like the fire, we were in the thick of this and trying to coordinate responses. One thing that I could tell you, the biggest challenge for us from a road department standpoint was keeping our people safe. When this first happened, it was dark. It was getting bad. We had a lot of crews out. There were trees falling all over the place. We pulled everybody in. We are not going to risk the safety of our workers when frankly, you're chasing your tail anyway, and you really couldn't do much. And we could go clear out some debris off, say, Clackamas River Drive. Half hour later, it's going to be blocked again. I mean, there just wasn't a point, and it wasn't doing any good. So the big challenge for us is we had to tell people, shelter in place. Workers, we're pulling them in. We're just going to have to wait this one out. It was just too dangerous. The utility coordination is huge. People want power. God knows I did. But we have to be able to get the power companies safely to access their own infrastructure. And incidentally, we learned with FEMA ain't going to pay for you to get them there. They'll pay for you to like clear a 10-foot wide swath around the power pole. But the mile or 2 miles you took to get there, they're not going to participate in that. So that was big. But the fact that we were already doing a lot of working from home, it was just because if people couldn't leave home and happen to actually have power or have ways to get power with generators, we already knew how to work. The other thing I know I could tell you with transportation is we had previously purchased some dual band radios and handed them out to a lot of our supervisors. And so we have those, by the way, it worked well with the fire too, where I could just hit scan and I could hear everything that's going on. They're expensive, but they were worth it. It's a more reliable way to communicate, and we could listen in on police and fire, and our road maintenance people use it as well. So that worked. Having to clear all that debris. Our maintenance folks can't say enough about the work they put in. We had a 40,000 yard debris pile at Barton Park, where we have a maintenance facility, and we dumped it. And then I know a lot of cities really struggled with that, where some of them did a good job getting the debris out, but then they're like, now what do we do with all this? I know Clackamas County, we hired a guy to come in with a huge tub grinder, and I watched him work. He'd grab about an entire dump truck full at a time and drop it in this tub, and it would just come out as chips. And then we just found people throughout the county to take the chips. It was a pretty remarkable operation. And so that's how we dealt with it. There were other situations where, branches hanging over sidewalks, roads, that would be the secondary, the ones that hadn't already fallen. We then had to get out and make sure, hey, let's not have any secondary incidents. And we certainly, again, didn't want anybody to get hurt. So then we had to come out and respond to those and figure out, okay, where's the road right away? Can we even legally take this tree out or this big branch out? Are we trespassing? and you're doing a lot of that on the fly. You know, we're going to err on the side of safety, but you know, we're not going to do anything where we know for sure, yeah, we can't do that without permission. But luckily, in an incident like this, you know, everyone's helping each other out. I could tell you, it's one thing I learned with even just the neighbors on my street. We had been under COVID for a year, and this brought everyone outside and together. We talked more. We're always been good neighbors, but we talked more in February of 2021 than we had in the past year combined. So, Captain ONeal, challenges?
Yeah, one of the big challenges for us was an increased call volume. You know, part of our job is to go out and check on people when a loved one can't get a hold of them. That just sent the call volume through the roof because no one had power. You know, there may have not been a telephone to the house, especially the elderly who may not have cell phones. They just have a landline phone. And when all that's taken out, you know, little Johnny from Florida can't get a hold of grandma and needs us to go out and check on her. And so we had to upstaff quite a few people just to go out and deal with those welfare checks coming in. And then some of those places that we were trying to get to, you know, Mike's folks hadn't been able to get to clear roads. And so now our deputies are having to park and hike in and around obstacles to get into those residents. So that was a huge challenge. You know, our deputies are well versed in driving in inclement conditions. You know, we don't get to take a day off because it snowed. You know, we still have to go to work. We have the luxury of having Mount Hood and snow a good portion of the year. So our deputies are used to driving in snow and ice and using traction devices and whatnot. But you know, so them getting around, it takes us a little longer to get somewhere. And with that increased call volume, it's just more manpower hours that are going to need to be dedicated to it. The other big challenge from my standpoint was at some point we had some political pressure and we're told, hey, the National Guard is showing up on Monday to help you out. And it's like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do with the National Guard? And of course, you know, think back to you know, just society in general and politics and how they're playing into, you know, either the right or the left. It doesn't matter, you know, what side you're on. The good portion of, you know, those outlying areas of Clackamas County are, you know, Second Amendment, you know, you're not going to take my guns, you know, that sort of mindset. And I'm just thinking now we're going to have the military showing up in people's driveways unannounced. You know, I saw a huge safety concern for our military folks because they were not sent out there armed. And so there was some communication between us about what their function was going to be. And so we utilized them in a logistical standpoint where they would bring us supplies that we would identify that, hey, this homeowner needs some MREs, some water, to be able to, you know, survive for a few more days. And so we would send a deputy out to make the initial contact because it's not uncommon to see deputies and law enforcement out in those areas. And then if they needed something, we let them know, hey, don't be alarmed, but there's going to be a Humvee with 4 military guys coming in to bring you those supplies that you just wanted. So that was a huge challenge for us to overcome. I think we managed it very well, and it was successful for everybody.
Jamie?
Yeah, so I would say that public information was a big challenge because our communication pathways were not great. And there's so many cell carriers that were down and landlines down and internet outages. And I would say, you know, Captain ONeal said on the wildfires, our biggest success was no lives lost. But during this event, we actually had four people that passed away suspected to carbon monoxide poisoning. So that's a big challenge for us, is trying to communicate the right ways to stay warm and getting folks resources. We did set up 5 resource centers across the county for folks to come in and get blankets, get some, you know, MREs and water. And we did see about 2,000 people come through those sites. But again, those folks that could make it to those sites were the ones that could utilize it. So I think with the welfare checks that Captain O'Neill just spoke about and getting the stuff out that way helped us, because we couldn't really get to the people we couldn't get to, right? Yeah.
If I can just follow up with what Jamie just mentioned, it reminded me back to with the wildfires as well. Thinking about communication and how people communicate these days, social media. It's a blessing, it's a godsend, but it can also be a curse. There's so much information put out on social media that isn't factual. And having to overcome those things, social media can get the public spun up very quickly because they believe what they see, that they believe what they read sometimes. So just be mindful of that and try and head that off before it really spins too far out of control.
Yeah, and another major challenge that we were faced with is folks that were on medical devices that needed to be recharged. And we actually did deliver out some generators to folks so that they could stay charged with their medical devices and oxygen concentrators. And we also had to deliver a lot of oxygen out to people. The hospitals were seeing an increase of folks that just from the power outage, they could traverse, but they had to go in and stay at the hospital because they had no oxygen or other medical devices.
There's a question that I think I could take a stab at. Share some general lessons learned between both of these events that might be informative for how to deal with the Cascadia earthquake. And boy, these were tame in comparison. But I definitely had some takeaways. One thing we're doing in Clackamas is, from a transportation standpoint, we've taken a map of the county and divided it up into some zones. And those zones were based on rivers mostly, because I figure in a big earthquake, every employee, I mean, let's face it, we're at work 40 to 50 hours a week. We're not here most of the time. Most of the time, we're actually home. So if an earthquake's going to be random, odds are you're going to be home, or you're going to want to really get home. And so we've divided the county up into 20 or so zones based on where our employees live. And we've identified, this is transportation employees, and we've identified a few in each of those zones, and we've actually practiced and said, hey, here's the bridges. In addition to 1,400 miles, we have 180 bridges that Clackamas County takes care of. That doesn't count ODOT facilities or city facilities. So there's more. But we say, hey, know the infrastructure. Here's the inspection reports and photos. Take photos of the bridges so you know what they looked like before. So when we ask you to go out and look at them after, you might say, oh, that crack was already there, for example. Or I already knew what that looked like. We know where our landslides are. And so we actually are hiring a consultant right now who may or may not be in this webinar to help us finalize those plans and actually have a really good implementable plan. So when it happens, we can keep practicing. We've done drills with communication. I mentioned those radios. I think a lot of hunting radios are good because VHF, you can be line of sight. And so I think the 800 megahertz, if the towers go down, or the power goes out to them, you're in trouble and maybe can't use them. But we want to have good plans. We want them to know where their fire stations are, because that's where people are probably going to congregate. So we're trying to look at it at a real micro level. So that all these things, coordination, communications, operations, infrastructure, and planning, can be done on a micro level. We want to identify the places, and it happened with the ice storm too. There's certain roads we just knew we couldn't get too fast. Yeah, we cleared 500 miles really quickly, but I'm guessing one of those wasn't Rainbow Road, which none of you know where it is except probably Captain O'Neill. And there's a bridge at the bottom of Rainbow Road. And we want to be able to tell those folks, if the earthquake happens, we're not coming. It's going to be a while. And so, but we want them to know and be prepared. And I think having everybody be more prepared on the micro level will help us. Even if we have events like a fire or a flood, which we have from time to time as well, or another ice storm. I just think it raises everyone's preparation and planning just a little bit so that we could be more resilient. Long answer, but it's my thoughts.
That's a good answer. And actually, I wanted to ask the same question just as it related to the ice storm is, you did damage assessment, you figured out what roads were closed. How did you communicate that in the ice storm? Like, hey, don't go down this road if you go out, both to the public, but also to responders or the like, that road is closed right now.
Well, we activate our emergency operations center, and we keep maps. We use what is it, Jamie? WebEOC.
Yeah, there's road closure status that we can track.
We have maps. We also use trip check, and so I believe we even have a process automated right now where through our road maintenance folks, they can actually just update both WebEOC and trip check at the same time. If I don't have that exactly right, it's close to that. And so it pushes out to the public to let them know. And we just have to then make sure we circle back and show that it's open when it's open. That's really important to get right because we want people to trust the information.
Mike, do you also, on certain roads like that, like there's the one picture of, I think it's Johnson Creek Boulevard there, you put road closure out, right? Like a barrier or, so at least if people don't see it ahead of time, they get to where there is a barrier.
Yeah, no, and Johnson Creek Boulevard, that's an annual thing. It goes up a very steep hill in Happy Valley, and we're used to that one, and the people there are used to it too. I can't remember the grade, but it's large. But yeah, no, we have many road closed signs. The problem with type 3 barricades, and that is you just get out of your car and slide it over and go right through it. And so that's certainly a lesson learned over and over throughout the years, that if you really need it closed and someone's life depends on it, you either have to keep a human being there or you have to get some kind of concrete barrier. Even concrete barrier doesn't do it anymore. You need concrete barrier with a pile of gravel behind it. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good hard closure. But even just concrete barrier, someone will come up with their truck and pull it away. They do it.
I have one last challenge, if I could. We also we're having problems getting fuel into folks, and some of the water providers specifically, their generators were dependent on fuel. And we actually had a couple water providers that had like a conserved water, and one that actually had a boil water notice. So people were looking for water. Out in Malala, they were coming to get potable water from the fire station and the resource center. And that was a major challenge, working with the Oregon Department of Energy to source and get fuel in.
Yeah, I mean, we forget some, particularly with the fires, the whole state was under siege, and that, and I did have a question about regional coordination, and what was good, what were challenges, what could be better around regional coordination to help you all.
So regional coordination from the law side, we had not only agencies within Clackamas County, we had Multnomah County, Washington County. We had other counties throughout the state of Oregon offering more help had we needed it. But then you look at like Marion County to the south of us, they didn't offer us any help because they had their own huge fires that they were dealing with. So, we're a part of the State Sheriff's Association, and all the sheriffs in the state of Oregon are very tight knit. We've sent personnel. In fact, this last summer, we sent personnel down to Southern Oregon to help them out with their fires down there. So We have a very good working relationship from the law side with those outside agencies.
I would say the same with county engineers and road officials. We have a group called Oasis, Oregon Association of County Engineers and Surveyors, which I'm now the past president of as of a couple of weeks ago. Great position to be, past president, by the way, just want to say. But we're very close as well. And we meet all the time and we're always helping. And of course, Jackson County was going through a much worse fire situation when it came to loss of property than we were. So, I mean, we weren't the worst one in the state, and ours felt absolutely horrific. But we do all talk, we share, you know, much like we're doing here, which, by the way, this is a great example, I think, also of regional coordination, so other people can learn from the experiences. But we do that all the time, where we share experiences and stories and talk about how we could maybe do better next time.
Yeah, and I would agree. As far as like emergency management staff, during the wildfires, we had Brenda Cruz, who was working in Milwaukee at the time, came to our EOC. We had Anthony from Cressa. We had folks coming in and helping us from across the region. Laura was in our EOC doing planning. So really helpful having those folks come help us. And then with the ice storm, we virtually had someone from Washington County Emergency Management helping us in our virtual EOC as well.
Great. And I had just one last question, and I know that people, if you're still listening, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A. We have about 10 more minutes with this panel. But this is probably more for Mike, and it's kind of thinking, you know, we're in the process of updating the RTP, the Regional Transportation Plan, and just kind of thinking about resilience and recovery and response as it relates to transportation. You know, what could Metro be thinking about, or regionally we could be thinking about, to, I guess, include these type of issues into the RTP? What would you like to see included there in that discussion?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, as I mentioned before, I think being able to make sure that our routes are in good shape is really important. Now, that isn't necessarily an RTP issue, right? A lot of it's maintenance and operations, you know, but I think making sure that our routes can handle what they need to handle. And, you know, Captain ONeal said it well. You know, when push comes to shove, we could turn a 2-lane road into a 3-lane road in an emergency, you know, but we need shoulders for that, right? And many county roads do not have adequate shoulders. They were built a really long time ago. And so to help get people out, you know, and our transportation system plan is filled with add shoulders to this road, add shoulders to that road, add shoulders to this road. Even just a 4-foot shoulder could accommodate a lot, not during emergencies, you know, if there's bikers or what have you, but then it just gives us that little extra width so that if we had to, we can get 2 rows out, right? Something like that, or have that ability to get emergency vehicles out. So I think projects like that maybe don't really score well. There's not grants available for them. They're not sexy projects, so they don't get a lot of, you know, attention. There's not going to be a ribbon cutting for it, but they could be really, really important. And so, you know, that and bridges, just make sure our bridges are being retrofitted. You know, so many of them are not. And if we know this is coming, you know, this is not going to blindside us. There's going to be a big earthquake. You know, if we can just get the bridges to the point where they're not going to collapse, and we could still use them, I think that would be a nice thing to invest in.
Great, thanks. I don't see any other questions, so I'm gonna use the prerogative to start summing up here. Laura, I don't know if you are able to come on, but I just wanted to thank the panel very much. I really appreciate you providing this information. I hope everyone on the webinar today found it as interesting as I did. Laura and I are kind of in charge of this kind of series of workshops or webinars. The next one is December 8th, and we're going to be looking at resilient investments and plans, kind of leading off of what Mike maybe had been talking about there. And we're going to have Mike Harriman from the state of Oregon Resiliency Officer talk about the RRAP program that he's been working on. Kim Ellis, who is at Metro, and then Mauricio Leclerc from Peabody, and some others talk about what's happening locally around resiliency of their systems. So we're really excited about that. And I see a question says, will you folks send out an invitation link or have the same link used today? There is a link in the chat that you can go to both the actual registration and the website that we're holding these webinars on. We will post this link to this webinar and the slides to that, but you also find registrations to the next webinar for December 8th. And then the final workshop we are planning for January, February. We hope to do this in person, and it's going to be specifically looking at prioritization and tiering of routes. How do we in the region look at thinking about our network of transportation routes, particularly ETRs, and how do we think about prioritization and tiering of those as we look at building out that network? We have to make investment choices, but how do we use those in a way that meets both movement of people, movement of goods, response, and all that. So hopefully we're going to do a in-person workshop in the first of next year. So that said, we're done. Again, thank you to the panel. Thank you to the mayor for the introduction, and we hope to see you in December. Bye, all.